All right. Welcome everyone to Cloud Asta's web series for Google Workspace. Today's session is about Google Vault. What is it and what should I know about it? This is probably one of the more important admin tools that is not necessarily one that everybody is aware of or is set up properly. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to go really soup to nuts with Google Vault. And if you have any questions during or after the fact, please feel free to email us at webinars@cloudasta.com. We would love to chat with you a little bit more about Google Vault. All right. For those of us who are here, if you can submit any questions through the chat, that way we can go ahead and keep those logged. And if you want to interrupt as we go, or we could chat more at the end. All right. All right. So what is Google Vault and what can it protect? So Google Vault is essentially Google Workspace's, I hate to call it a backup or archive system. So this way, it has a built-in capabilities to retain and search and access data. This could be for just general housekeeping purposes. It could be for legal purposes, and so on and so forth. We'll get into some examples in a second. But going about to what data can it protect? So the apps that are listed above are all fall under the Google Vault umbrella. So messages from Gmail, content in Drive, and messages in chat, and Meet recordings, groups, and sites are all things that can be protected in Google Vault. How can we access it? And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we do a demo. Is from the apps launcher, our little 9-dot waffle button, using that Vault icon, which should show up for us admins, or navigating directly to vault.google.com. And that should bring you directly to that site. We'll look into what that feels like in a few minutes. Before we get too much into the nitty-gritty, let's talk a little bit about licensing. So for Vault to be able to search and retain user data, a user must have a Google Workspace license of some sort and a Vault license. So Vault licenses are included in most SKUs: Business Plus, Enterprise, Enterprise Essentials, Education Fundamentals, and Plus, and G Suite Business. For Vault licenses, for Frontline and G Suite Basic, they are add-ons, so you're not necessarily included. So if you have one of those earlier SKUs, then your users automatically have Google Vault licenses, and you don't have to worry about assigning anything. But if you have Frontline or G Suite Basic, those are add-ons that you need to purchase and assign them to specific users. And this is basically what I actually spoke a little too quickly there, talking about how the users are automatically assigned if you've got it included, and you need to assign it if it's an add-on. If you're deleting a user or a license, the data is also tied to that license. So if there is data that is outside of a retention period, or it's very old, and a user is deleted, or a Vault license, maybe it's an add-on, is removed, then that data may be purged and deleted. So just have to be a little bit careful about how you assign and remove licenses. All right, so what does Vault really provide for you? Give you the option to keep data for as long as you need it. So you may have a retention policy for data, so you could set it up for a certain time. And the really big thing that I think it gets lost on folks and not thinking about this is data remains available in Vault even when users delete it and empty their trash. This is probably the main purpose that for many people for using Vault, is that there was emails, there were files, there were things that existed at one point. Somebody deleted it, but you want to be able to go back and find it and see it. We're talking about after like a 30-day drive deletion period or anything like that. So Vault's magic is having the ability to retain that data even if they delete it. That is key. This is why Vault is important. Removing data when you no longer need it. So if on the flip side, if you are required to delete sensitive data after a certain period of time, 6 months, a year, 3 years, whatever it is, you can configure Vault to remove it very purposefully from user accounts and not wait for a user to delete certain things. So you kind of have both ends of the spectrum. How long do you want to keep things, and when do you need to delete things? That's the power of Vault. So we're going to go into this in a minute. We have to create retention rules that apply to Google services. So Vault is in a separate archive. When retention rules expire or any holds expire, files get deleted just as if they were to normally get deleted. Data gets purged when those rules are over. Some quick notes that are really important. Vault doesn't retain data until you set up these retention rules. Obviously, if people have emails that are still in there or files that are still in their drive, they have them. But if they delete those things, those are not retained until you set up retention rules. That is the first thing we're going to talk about and do today, which is probably the most important thing. You may not have retention rules set up right now. So if somebody deleted something, a couple days ago or a couple months ago, that is gone. So we want to make sure that we set those retention rules up. But a really other important note that's not listed here is if you set up a default retention rule, which we'll talk about in the next slide, for example, all Gmail messages for 1 year, and that's the only rule you have set up. That means that Vault's going to delete every message in your domain that's older than that year. So we just also need to be careful. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword when you're setting up your retention rules. How long do you need to keep things, and how long before you want things to be deleted? It's kind of two sides of the same coin. All right, so there are default retention rules. So this is all data within a service, Gmail, Drive, so on, for all licenses. So you say, I want all email to be indefinite. I want all emails to only be 3 years, all Drive things to be indefinite, all chat to only be a year, so on and so forth. You can make that up. And then when you get into, you can also add on top our custom retention rules. So this can be things set up for the specific services, Gmail, Drive, chat, so on and so forth, but you can make them more specific. I want to set up a retention rule just for this one organizational unit. I want to set up this retention rule for files that are only specific to this type or this date or so on and so forth. Or if you have, I don't know, let's see, Gmail retention rules that you say anything that has the word, I don't know, contract in it needs to be retained indefinitely, so on and so forth. So you can really add some things here, and these layer on top. So the longest retention rule that you have will apply to those files, and then it kind of trickles down from there. All right, and I know sometimes I, chat and demo. I think we're going to go through kind of the whole thing explanation first, and then we're going to do some demoing today. So e-discovery is kind of just the main piece of Vault, where users, or if you want to add other users to this permission, that they can go ahead and search for data, put data on hold, and export data with Vault. And that's kind of the first 3 steps of this e-discovery process: identification, preservation, and collection, that we're going to talk a little bit about. So identification, searching. So you can search by user account, by organizational unit, by date, by keyword, by so many different things. And you can attach different search operators so you can make it really specific to what you are looking for, right? I'm going to search for a Gmail message containing the word training, or all Drive files by Nick that are Google Docs, so on and so forth. You can really kind of drill down or see as much as you want. We'll look at what that looks like in a few minutes. Holds. So holds are an interesting thing that are generally, I would say, used more for legal or other retention obligations, where you can put holds on accounts, groups, organizational units, where you maybe need to have a hold where you're preserving data indefinitely, but that conflicts with your retention rules. So holds supersede retention rules. So let's say you have your Gmail retention rule on for 3 years, but you have a legal investigation and you need to put a hold on a specific user account for their Gmail until the investigation is over. So what you can do is you could set up that hold, and then while everybody else in the organization will still be following that default retention rule, you have a hold for that user so nothing will get deleted in the meantime. Holds never expire, they just stay forever until you remove them. And keeping in mind that once a hold is deleted, that all the data that was under that hold comes back into the default retention rule. So if you, again, let's use that example, you have something that's for a default Gmail rule for 3 years, and you put a hold on for a whole year, then as soon as you remove that hold, that 3 to 4 years worth of emails will go ahead and start being deleted. Just kind of keeping that in mind. One other really, really, really important thing, and this should be in big red letters, and it's not, that you should know is that if you delete a user account, the user's data is no longer available in Vault and cannot be restored. If you want to hold or retain users' data, the user must both have a Google Workspace account and a Vault license. So if you have somebody who's departing, but you want to hold onto their data, for any particular reasons, do not delete that account and expect to go find it in Vault later. Keep that account, maybe suspend it, maybe put it in, on a hold account, but like you can't delete it. Otherwise they will no longer be there in Vault. Vault is not a copy of user data. It is referencing data that has existed and currently exists, unless it's deleted data that's just stored separately. It is not a copy. So if you delete that user account, the data is gone. So keep those accounts. All right. Do we move here? Let's see. Oh, there it is. That was slow. All right. Just another quick slide from Google about what data is protected by a hold. And you can see here, I'll just kind of take a quick pause to see what's going on here in terms of what services cover which data under those holds. So you see Gmail with messages, groups with messages, Drive items, not folders and shortcuts, and so on and so forth. So I'll give the folks a second to just review that. All right. And then the last main big thing is exporting, so the collection. So after you're searching for data and you want to export it to process and analyze and all that jazz, you can export your search and it will export a copy of all the data, the metadata to link the individual users to the data, and some corroborating information that match the data to Google servers. Once you click data export, it's available in Vault for just over 2 weeks, and then that export is deleted. Again, the data is still there to be searched for again and exported for again, but that export collection is no longer available, just for consistency purposes and making sure that things stay protected. All right. You have the ability to turn on Vault access to folks within different organizational units with a specific admin role, and that has those privileges. Vault creates this audit log of all user activity within Vault, which is really cool. So when a user creates or edits a retention rule, runs a search, exports data, runs a log, all that jazz, it's all logged in there and it can't be changed or edited. So that way, if you did have this open to a couple of folks on your team, you would feel really good knowing that you know what's going on and if anybody's doing anything you don't necessarily approve of. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of a demo here about how to find Vault. So if I just, I'm going to type in vault.google.com, and I can see it right here, vault.google.com. and I get brought here to my Google Vault page. And it looks very simple, and that's okay. That's all we really need for right now. And we can go ahead and dive into this a little bit. So the first thing I want to talk about, I said, is those retention rules. That very first thing, and it's at the top for a reason. So we're going to click into retention. Again, if you are interested in this, please do not make changes to your Vault retention rules and stuff in this moment. I want you to really take a moment to think about it, to make sure that nothing gets deleted accidentally just because it was really exciting in the moment. So right now, you can see there's this big thing here that says data is subject to normal deletion processes unless default or custom retention rules are set. So you can see right now, under all these services, we've got a couple of things here. So we have, let me zoom in just a little bit here. Under duration, you can see it says indefinitely for Gmail. So if I want to go in, I'm going to go into Drive for a second, and I could see right now I'm keeping everything in Drive indefinitely. So if something was deleted a year ago, as long as the user is still active and has a license, I can go back and find that file. And I could change this retention period if I want it to be something different that's not indefinite. Maybe I want it to be a year from the date that it was created. Maybe you want it to be a year from the date it was modified. And we could go ahead and change all this, and you could see what happens after that happened. That expiration date ends. You want to purge these only these deleted items. You want to purge all items that aren't permanently deleted. There's a couple of options in here. I want you to look at them and figure out what works best. If I go into Gmail, it looks probably a little bit different here. You can see date when messages are sent or received. So each service is going to have a slightly different version of what these retention periods look like in terms of like what the requirements are for when to start the retention period. So if you go into your console and you see under duration that these are just off or there's no retention policy set, you really want to think about it and you really want to get it in. Again, indefinite is going to be something where you're keeping things for forever. And then if you want to go and be a little bit more specific, you can. Keeping in mind what we talked about earlier, you can have a default rule that's a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, and then you can have these custom rules, right? So we can create a custom rule. So let's say I have a default rule for Gmail that is for, I'm going to say, about 3 years. Pretty rough math there, but about 3 years. And then we're going to hit save. Okay, great. Custom rules will apply after purge. Great. See, there's a lot of things that say, really make sure you do this correctly. Okay, I'm going to set this up. And then when I go into custom rules here, I say, I want to create a custom rule. So for Gmail, I want to create one where for this test organizational unit. So I'm choosing an organizational unit. Great. Let me change you back. Great. I want to, create some conditions here where it says, I want to keep all the data that was from this time to this time for a longer time. Or I cannot have any conditions. And I could just say, you know what, actually, I want to now override my Gmail retention policy. Or you could say anything that, like I said before, anything that has in the subject, right, term contract, I want to retain indefinitely. I can go ahead and create that. And now any Gmail messages that have the term contract in the subject will be retained indefinitely, overriding the 3-year default retention rule for Gmail. So that's kind of how those layer on top of each other and what that looks like. And the last little thing in here is how you want Meet and Sites to be managed. So is Meet retained by its own Meet rule, or is it just retained by the Drive rule? And same for Sites. So you can have specific Sites and Meet rule, or you could just have it kind of default up to the Drive rule, your choice. All right, that's probably one of the more important things right now is to get our Drive set up or our retention rules set up. I want to show you now, we have a retention rule set up, super duper. Now, what does this mean? How can I use this? So we want to go in and create a matter. Matter is saying, hey, I want to go in and I need to look into something. I need to look into a matter. So I'm going to create a matter. I'm going to call this one training 1014 and hit create. This just kind of houses what you're looking for in kind of like its own little folder space. So I'm going to search for something. I want to search in Drive. I'll use my account. Again, you could choose specific accounts. You could choose OUs, shared drives, sites, so on and so forth. I want to search in my account. I don't need to search. I don't want to search in shared drives right now that I'm a part of. I want to search for, let's just search for everything for a moment. So I could search here and I could see I got 10 results coming in here. But I need some more stuff. I need to really get more specific. So what can I do? I can add some terms. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call it type. And this way I can say, I want to only look at spreadsheets or I only look at docs. Now, how do you know what to type in here? So if you hover over this little I here, it says, use different terms. And you click this learn more, it brings you to this really super duper page that says, hey, you want to search for Drive? Here's how you can do things to search for Drive. For example, I can search for a type of a file and type for a presentation or type Google Doc. They call it a text doc, so it's not confused with documents. Document is all documents. So I'm going to search for a type text doc, which should be any Google Docs that I have on this account. Go ahead and hit search. And you can see I'm only seeing my two files here. You can see when they were last modified. And if I click into one of those, I can get a preview of what that looks like. If you like my secret recipe, it's nothing. And I can go ahead and download a copy of that if I needed to, and so on and so forth. What I can do now is I can come back to this. I can save it. Training, search for text docs by Nick. Save that search. And you could update it, you could copy it, you could share it, things like that. But maybe, you know what, this is really great. This is really helpful for my investigation. I want to export this so I can go ahead and download it, look into it more later, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to export. So this is training, search for Nick, Google Docs only. And I don't necessarily want these access level information, but you could turn that on and you could choose your data region. I want it for the United States. And I'm going to hit export, and I'm going to get an export in a few minutes here. You can see it says it's in progress. It doesn't happen immediately. Depending on the size, it'll take more time. And what you could do, so if you go over to exports here, you could see that it's working on that. And we have 15 days until that gets deleted. So once that's done, you could download that file and look at it on your computer and so on and so forth. I want to talk a little bit about holds and then audits, and then we'll wrap up here with questions. So holds, which I talked a little bit about before, we can go into our matter here, and just like we did with the search, we can create a hold. So I'm going to create a hold, and I really need to retain Nick's email. Because there's something that I really want to keep in case anything were to happen. So I'm going to click Gmail, and then I'm going to choose which account. So I'm going to choose my test account, or I could choose a specific unit, but maybe it'll be a legal hold or something like that, and you have to set up a hold on a specific account. Remember, holds are important because they supersede retention rules. So if you have a retention rule that is ending at a certain time, the hold will be indefinite as long as you leave the hold active. So I'm going to click continue. If you want to add any conditions, you can. Again, maybe anything in the subject that had the word, donuts, and I'm going to hit create. So now the hold for anything that is in Nick's email, the subject that has the word donuts. And that is something that will stay there until you go ahead and delete it. I'm going to go back to my hold. You can see my hold is now done. I can download that. It'll download all of these great files, and we can download those and check those out. All right, and last but not least are audits. So there's a couple different places to do audits. and reporting. So we can do audit right within our matter, and we can see, everything that's happened within this audit here. I can say, I want to check a specific range. I want to look and see who's done anything from this user account, and have they done exports, retentions, matters, searches, what have they done? And you could download a CSV log of all of that. Another place is if we go back to our homepage here, under reports, we can see things a little bit more clearly. So again, this looks really similar. You could do an audit of everything that's happened. We could do a domain hold. We could see any domain holds that we have. We could see all of the user holds that we have set up. You could see here's my user hold that I had set up, or any group holds that we had set up. So here you could just do a little bit of reporting to get a little bit more insight into your vault access here. Again, your biggest things, just to recap, are setting up your retention rules. I'm going to go ahead and change this back to indefinite. Setting up your retention rules as soon as you can, but also make sure you're doing it with what aligns with your organization. Custom rules are there if you need to add in some specialty rules that work for you. And then matters is where you're going to go ahead and search for things, check things out, and be able to see what you need to see when you need to see it, whether it's in Gmail, Drive, Groups, Chat, Voice, Sites, so on and so forth. And that is the whole big thing from the soup to nuts with Google Vault. I'm going to come back to questions for 1 second. I just want to share with everyone that our next webinar is actually in 2 weeks. It's called Just the Basics for Docs, Sheets, and Slides, generally for end users, but really for everyone. If you're just getting started, or you know anybody else who's just getting started with those editors, we would love to see them there. We already have a bunch of folks signed up, and it's going to look very promising. So we highly encourage folks to check us out in 2 weeks. But I'm going to stop us here with our recording. And if you have any questions, please email us at webinars@cloudasta.com. And we would love to talk to you more about Google Vault or anything Google Workspace related. I'm Nick Casey, and thanks so much.